Hello, and welcome to the Consumer Toolbox. I'm your host, Milagros Johnson, and I'm the Director of the Mayor's Office of Consumer Information in Springfield. We are a local consumer program funded by and working in cooperation with the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office. We serve consumers of Hampden County and parts of Worcester County. Our program's mission is to provide you, the consumer, with the necessary tools to make informed decisions. We strive to educate you on your consumer rights and prevent you from becoming a victim of a scam or fraud. Each month, we bring to you a local guest speaker who will share his or her expertise and further enrich you with consumer knowledge. Our motto is education is the best prevention, and the Consumer Toolbox gives you the tools you need to become a savvy consumer. I hope you stay and watch. Today I have a wonderful guest, and actually he's a little bit beyond local. He comes from the Boston office of the Massachusetts Department of Telecommunications and Cable, Corey Pilz. Welcome, Corey. Thank you for traveling to Springfield.
No, thank you, Milagros.
The Springfield area, I should say, because you're in Ludlow right now.
Oh,
so
yes.
I do appreciate you making the effort and coming out here on a sunny day, of course, but having you here today is really important to us. I think the agency's mission is really important, as is our mission, but obviously it's a different level of work that you do. So I think it's important that we introduce our viewers to exactly what the DTC offers to consumers. So tell me about the agency, first of all.
Absolutely. Well, the Massachusetts Department of Telecommunications and Cable, or the DTC as we're widely known, is a state regulatory agency in Massachusetts government, and we oversee the telephone and cable companies operating in Massachusetts. But what most people don't know about the DTC is we're actually one of 5 agencies in the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation, which is led by Undersecretary John Chapman.
Okay, did you say 5 agencies?
Yes.
Okay, can you briefly go over the agencies for us?
Absolutely. So together with the Division of Banks, the Division of Insurance, the Division of Standards, and the Division of Professional Licensure, we work to ensure a positive climate for businesses in Massachusetts, as well as to protect and empower our consumers to make smart decisions.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
I know our office refers a lot to a lot of those agencies, primarily Division of Banks,
Yes.
and that is when the consumer has an issue with a bank and it's outside of our jurisdiction because we don't have a lot of power. And so they are accountable, banks are accountable to, and credit unions are accountable to, correct?
Absolutely.
To Division of Banks. So that is another resource for consumers, and I'm glad that you enlightened us on that.
Yes, the Division of Banks, as you said, they actually oversee all of the state-chartered banks and credit unions in Massachusetts, and their team works very hard to make sure we have a sound, accessible, and competitive financial services environment in Massachusetts. But their team's also great because they give a lot of financial education information out, so they make sure consumers have the information they need to make those wise financial choices.
Wonderful. Now, Corey, are those agencies easily accessible online for consumers to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What most people don't know is you can go to www.consumer.com, and that goes directly to the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation.
See, I didn't know that. Usually I do mass.gov,
No.
and then that directs me to all the different entities and agencies, but I didn't know there was a www.consumer.gov.
Yes, and it's
Isn't
here
that
in
wonderful?
Massachusetts. And, worst comes to worst, if a consumer doesn't know which agency they should talk to, the Office of Consumer Affairs also has a consumer hotline, which consumers can call, and that number is 888-283-3757.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
That's great. Now, do you have Spanish-speaking staff available?
Yes, and actually the DTC, we too have a consumer hotline, which you can reach at 800-392-6066, again, during normal business hours, Monday through Friday, and we do actually have an option for Spanish speakers to press and speak with one of our investigators.
Isn't that wonderful? Now, I'm going to put you on the spot. How about TTY? Is that available?
Yes, I do believe it's available, but I don't have the number.
Okay,
off
but
the
it's
top of my
available
head.
on the website?
Yes.
Isn't that great? So it serves everyone?
Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
that's great. And the complaint forms are also, if a consumer has an issue and they want to file a complaint, they can do that from the website. And we can talk more about that a little later.
Yes, absolutely.
Isn't that great? So tell me about your role, because I know it's an important one, Corey. I worked with you before
Yes.
with the Attorney General's office, and we lost you, but it was a gain to the DTC.
Yes.
So I know it's a very important role that you play. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Absolutely. So I am the Deputy Director of our Consumer Division, and we are really the eyes and ears of the agency. Our primary goal is to enforce the residential consumer protections available for telephone and cable service. But generally, we too have our consumer hotline where consumers can call us, ask us different questions about whether there may be a charge or a fee on their bill that they're unsure of. They may have received a notice from their service provider about a change in their service or a change in technology, and they need some clarification on that. Or most of the time, it's just they need help working with their service provider because they have a billing issue or some type of quality of service issue. It may be static on their telephone line, their television may pixelate, or they may be experiencing an outage in their community.
Funny you should mention outage, because I know that there has been some issues. I've been reading about it on the news, watching it on TV. We've gotten a few calls which we've directed to the DTC. Can you briefly explain what happened if you know the details?
Absolutely. So I think you're referencing there was a brief outage of cable television service for Charter Communications customers, and they did make the department aware. It was actually a multi-state outage where three states total were affected by the outage. And again, when we speak to consumers about an outage, it's important that they notify their provider directly. Sometimes it could be a matter of a truck taking some lines down or a car hitting a pole, so the provider may not necessarily be aware of it right away. And especially when it comes to telephone service, if consumers do happen to have a mobile device in their home and they've lost their telephone service, maybe because of a power outage, we encourage them to still communicate with their provider, especially if it's a public safety issue, if it's an elder or someone that's receiving medical care and they really do need their telephone service. They call the provider and they will prioritize them to hopefully repair it. Now, when it comes to natural disasters, as you know, September is Preparedness Month for Massachusetts because we're rolling into hurricane season as well as the snow, which no one wants to talk about.
Very sensitive.
Yes, I know, especially after last winter.
Yes.
But, we encourage consumers to be prepared, have the numbers to their providers available. In situations where it is a natural disaster, the companies can't necessarily deploy their teams until it's safe to do so. But again, I know they work very hard and they work collaboratively with us to keep us in the loop about any repair issues or any outages.
Isn't that great? So in a nutshell, what consumers should do is first contact their provider before they contact your office and see if they can get the problem resolved on their own before escalating to your department.
Absolutely. And we also encourage consumers to contact us to make us aware as well, because throughout that process, sometimes there's some feedback we can actually provide to the company. Perhaps they should have communicated a little bit better, and we do have that relationship with the company where we can say, we heard this, and maybe it's something we can address next time when there is such an outage.
So is it fair to say that DTC is actually a voice for consumers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Isn't that wonderful? That's wonderful. Now, you mentioned, Corey, that there are changes in technology. And I am quite familiar with the changes. Every time I turn around, there's a new system, a change that I'm unaware of. Now, in my vicinity where I live, we were recently introduced to fiber optic for internet service. Not being too familiar with it, I started doing research, and I understand it's the fastest form of getting a signal and service in your home. But there's also some downfall to it. The cables can be severed and tampered with. So can you explain to those who are unfamiliar and don't have the time to research it what fiber optic is? Let's start with fiber optic.
Absolutely. So fiber, as you mentioned, it's powered by light. So that's why it's essentially so fast as compared to our older systems, which we'll talk about. But people need to know about fiber is unlike the old telephone system that we used to have. When there was a power outage, you could still pick up the phone and it would work fine. But because fiber is powered by electricity and generally your electricity in your home, if we do happen to experience a prolonged power outage, your telephone service may not operate. Now, these telephone systems do come with the battery backup, and depending on the age of the battery, it usually lasts between 4 to 8 hours. But what we encourage consumers to be aware of is that, it is different from the plain old telephone service, as we call it.
The
landline,
as we refer to as the landline.
The landline, which nowadays, consumers don't realize they could have 3 different types of landline, depending on what they pick up, and it may not be the analog transmitted through the copper lines that people are so used to. And the reason why that wouldn't go out is because that is actually energized by the provider's central office during an outage.
Interesting.
But consumers that do have a generator in their home, that may be a benefit because they'll still have that electric, so they won't have to be too concerned. But nowadays, as they're improving the technology, they do have a tray where consumers themselves can just change the batteries to ensure that the service will work during those prolonged outages.
Who would ever think that you had to change a battery to have a telecommunication?
I
mean,
know, I
honestly,
know.
maybe just to pick up the phone and you dial rotary and you get the other person on the other end, and it's not
Yes.
like that anymore. In fact, there's another form of technology that's changed, and that's VoIP, VoIP.
Yes.
Can you explain that? Because I'm sure you're much more versed on that than I am.
So yes, VoIP, or what's called Voice over Internet Protocol, is typically what's offered by cable companies that provide telephone service in Massachusetts. And again, it's just a different means of transmission. They actually transmit that service through the internet line. So it usually will go through a cable modem or an internet modem if you do happen to subscribe to internet in your home.
So most consumers that switch to a bundle through their provider, when they have a bundle on their phone, it included, that's most always VoIP, correct?
Yes, most
Okay.
likely the VoIP service or another
VoIP,
type of digital service.
Okay, and you said VoIP, not
VoIP,
VoIP.
yes, VoIP.
Okay, I've been referring to it as VoIP, so I need to correct myself. VoIP. I like VoIP much better.
It's common though, so.
Right, now it does have, again, disadvantages. If you lose service, electricity, you lose everything. Everything stops working.
Again and again, but most of them are equipped with that battery backup. So it's just important for consumers to really know what type of service they do have in their home. So it's not a surprise that if an outage occurs and they haven't taken steps to prepare for it, they will know what to do.
Are there any other technologies that consumers should be aware of, either it's fresh and new or upcoming in the near future?
Well, I think what we're seeing now is a lot of advances in internet. You know, we started off with the DSL, which is generally the transmission of internet through the telephone lines. Now we do have fiber and broadband internet, so it's a lot faster speeds, and slowly but surely, we're working very hard to get the entire state connected, so we do have internet access.
Isn't that great? Now, does the DTC cover, and I'm asking this question because I get asked the question quite often,
Yes.
does the DTC cover cell phones?
So we actually do not have regulatory jurisdiction when it comes to cell phones. We're actually preempted by the federal government from regulating certain things like price and entry into the marketplace. However, we do accept wireless complaints from consumers. Although we don't have regulatory authority over it, we can offer the consumer, similar to what you do, a complaint mediation with the provider to see if we can resolve their concerns.
Okay, so but that is an option. The DTC is an option, as is a low consumer program. Contact the business directly.
Yes,
The
yes.
FTC sometimes, perhaps?
Or the
Mhm,
FCC as well.
Okay, so
Yes.
the consumers do have many options. And a
Yes.
lot of times they feel like they're alone and they can't resolve their issues on their own, and they have places and agencies that they can reach out to for
Absolutely.
assistance. Is there anything else that you want to address before we take a short break?
Well, I think it's important to actually discuss some of the consumer protections that are available on telephone service in which the department does enforce. Now, those regulations, with that said, only applies to that plain old telephone service
Okay.
or the regulated fiber, because some consumers now, our incumbent in Massachusetts is actually switching out their system from copper, and they are installing fiber, but the consumer, regardless of the switch in technology, still can maintain their regulated telephone service. And we actually have some really great protections that a lot of consumers are unaware of. For example, if anyone in your household, if everyone in your household is 65 or older, they actually can't suspend your telephone service due to non-payment without petitioning us, the department, and receiving our permission to do so. So for consumers who believe they qualify for this protection, they can either contact the department to receive the form, so we can make sure that if the situation does apply, consumers stay on with their telephone service to communicate with their medical providers or their doctors.
Is that Lifeline?
No, that's
That's
not
different.
Lifeline. That's
Oh, okay.
different. Yep, this
Okay,
is another
see?
protection
That's
built in.
Something else for consumers.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Also, most consumers don't realize if they do have the regulated telephone service in Massachusetts, they're entitled to up to 10 free directory assistance calls made within the state. And if they are a senior, once again 65 or older, they can actually fill out an exemption form, so they're entitled to an unlimited amount of directory assistance calls. Once again, those calls have to be made within the state, though.
Isn't that wonderful? Great information coming from Corey Pilz of the DTC in Boston. Don't go away. He'll be right back giving us more tools concerning your consumer rights in Massachusetts.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Welcome back to the Consumer Toolbox. I have a guest from the DTC office in Boston, Corey Pilz, who's informing us and giving us all the tools you need to know about your consumer rights when it comes to telecommunications and cable. Corey, let's pick up where we left off.
Yes.
You were talking about, briefly, I asked a question about Lifeline, and a lot of consumers don't know about that great program available to individuals.
Yes.
So if you can advise us as to what exactly is Lifeline and how consumers can take advantage of it if they feel the need and they qualify.
Absolutely, and a lot of consumers, when we talk about Lifeline, they confuse it with the medical device, Life Alert, and it's a completely separate program. Lifeline is actually a state and federal government benefit program, and it's designed to connect low-income consumers to telephone service. It was actually started back in the 1980s when installing telephone service in your home was, very expensive. But now it's kind of adapted to meet the modern times. So consumers are entitled to receive a discount on one form of telephone service, either a landline at their home or a wireless cell phone. And again, whether you're applying for a job, keeping up with your family members, or getting in touch with your healthcare providers, telephone is essential. So we do encourage consumers to reach out if they have any questions about Lifeline. And we on the state level, we oversee the program, and we really do support the federal government, the Federal Communications Commission, in ending any waste, fraud, or abuse related to the program.
Okay, and who determines if the consumer is eligible for those benefits?
So the way it's designed, it's an income eligible program, so we have to meet 135% of the federal poverty level, or you have to participate in one of the government assistance programs, which we have all laid out on our website.
Okay, so consumers should go to the DTC website,
Yes.
which should be up on the screen
Yes.
right now, so that they can take advantage of Lifeline.
Absolutely, or they can always go to the FCC's website, www.fcc.gov/lifeline.
Okay, and if the consumers don't have internet access,
Yes,
can they call
absolutely.
and get the application in the mail?
Yes, you can call the department, and we can direct them to the applications, or we can send the applications out, as well as any literature about the program and who qualifies and how to apply.
I asked that question because very often we get calls from mostly seniors that,
Yes.
everything you see on TV or turn around, it's always go to a website. Well, I don't have a computer, and they get quite frustrated. So I like to provide them with phone numbers, especially toll-free
Absolutely.
numbers.
Yes,
Because,
yes.
they need that.
We're very
to live
conscious
on
of that at the DTC. So.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you so much for that. So what advice would you give consumers if they want to save money on their telecommunications, on their bundle, on cable? I mean, everyone's looking to save money, especially with the cost of living, and people are struggling nowadays. I'm always giving consumer tips on how to save money.
Yes.
Financing is huge for us. What exactly would you suggest to them?
Well, Millie, as you know, it's all in the research. Consumers really have to do their research when they're looking to purchase their telecommunications and cable services. As you mentioned, a lot of days now companies decide to bundle services. But when a consumer is really considering a bundle, they have to recognize a lot of the time they have a promotional rate that they pay when they first enter the bundle. And usually that only lasts for 6 months, a year, sometimes 2 years, and then it will default to the regular retail rates. So a lot of times when consumers are doing their budget, they'll factor in that promotional rate, but they won't factor into what happens when that promotional rate expires. And it's also important to know that usually taxes, fees, and equipment charges are not in that bundled promotion rate. Those are added on top of the purchased bundle rate.
And we all know too well that those fees add up quite
Absolutely.
very quickly. I mean, sometimes they go up as much as, I mean, it can add up to $18, $20.
Absolutely.
And individuals are not incorporating that into their budget. They think it's just a flat fee of $69.99, for example. And by the time you receive the bill arrives, it's $85 or something to that effect. So consumers need to look at the whole picture and ask questions. They won't tell you what the fees are. Sometimes they will if you ask, but they're not going to volunteer that information because chances are you may not accept that package. If you know it's going to exceed your budget.
Yep, but usually once the company gets down to the bottom line, they will disclose all that information to you. But when it comes to cable service too, we encourage consumers to reach out to their local town or city because they may have actually negotiated an agreement with their provider to provide a senior discount for seniors. So we always encourage people to, again, really do their research before they just jump into something and make sure that what they're purchasing suits their needs. So do they really need the telephone, the internet, and the cable? Because a lot of times we'll have people who will enter into what they call the triple play, but they won't even plug the phone into the wall.
That is correct. Now, is there a possibility that these companies will offer a la carte service? So that if you know you're only going to watch 2 channels, those are the only 2 channels you watch, perhaps a local channel for local TV and maybe the Discovery Channel or something to do with health. Is that an option?
So that's actually been widely talked about, and we do know there is one company that's offering some form of a la carte service now. But a lot of questions we get from consumers is, why can't you tell the providers to offer us certain channels or to put this channel in a certain tier? And under federal law, it's actually the companies who are allowed to choose which program they wish to carry and what's best for them to carry it at which tier. And that generally relates to the agreement between the company themselves and the provider who's providing the content.
And I like to remind consumers that to be careful when they're switching providers because a lot of times you're locked into a contract. And not just a rate, but you're locked into a contract that comes with hefty early termination fees. And consumers are not aware that that is the case mostly with, internet and cable, especially for, cable. And we get a lot of those complaints. And they don't realize, well, I didn't sign anything. Well, that's because it comes in a little, like a phone, and you just sign that, and that's the contract. Unbeknown to them, they believe they're just signing, confirming that installation took place. So we get a lot of those complaints. Are providers allowed to change the channels? And we get those calls too. Is consumers call and say, I no longer get that channel, or I got a letter in the mail that this channel is going to be eliminated. That's my favorite channel. How can they do that? Why do they do that? Can you answer that question?
Yes. And again, they are allowed to do that under federal law. But the thing they are required to do is to tell the consumer, usually 30 days in advance before the loss of the station. Sometimes it's unavoidable because, again, it's a contract between the provider and the content broadcaster. So if they can't reach an agreement or they're negotiating, that channel may disappear suddenly. And a lot of times consumers are made aware of it, but it's on their bill. So again, we always encourage people to read their bill, including the bill messages, because sometimes they may discover, yes, their channel did disappear and the provider did tell them why.
I'm glad you said that because consumers tend not to read what comes inside the bill. They just open it, they see the minimum due, the due date, and that's all they look at. They need to look at everything, not just their cable and telephone bills, but their credit card bills, their bank statements. It's really important. They discover a lot of surprises when they do take the time to read what is in the package inside the envelope. So again, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Is there anything else that I haven't asked that you feel is really relevant to consumers?
Well, one of the things we did want to share right now is something that the department is actually undertaking. As you know, the Baker-Polito administration has made it a top priority for all of the state to review their regulations, and we're in the process of streamlining our regulations for the benefit of business. We actually just held a stakeholder hearing recently at the department where we listened to all different perspectives on our regulations. for the industry. So we're reviewing those right now. We're going to make some proposed changes to our regulations probably in January, but we're encouraging everyone, whether it's a consumer or industry, to be part of the process. We're being very transparent about this.
Isn't that great? Again, the DTC is the voice for consumers. And if consumers have a problem, have a question regarding their rights, they have a problem with the service that's being provided, we're not just a source for them. It's not just the local consumer program or the Attorney General's office. They also have the Department of Telecommunications and Cable. And the number was provided earlier.
Yes.
And if you can remind us again what that phone number is if consumers want to contact your office.
Absolutely. We have our toll-free number. It's 1-800-392-6066, and we operate our hotline during normal business hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Wonderful. Corey, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and making the effort to travel out to the station to interview.
My pleasure.
And answer the questions that consumers have. And provide all of the tools, the consumer tools for them. I'm full of new information now. I learned myself, and I'm constantly, learning and reading. And you answered some questions for me that I think were really important. Now I'm better prepared to answer them for consumers when they contact our office. So again, thank you so much for coming.
Yes.
I really appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
hopefully your phone lines won't be bombarded with
No.
calls from consumers now.
That's okay. We're ready. We're ready.
Okay, wonderful. Just like we are. We're always
Yes,
ready.
That's it.
I hope you found today's program informative and empowering. I most certainly did. If you like what you heard and you want to stay informed, I encourage you to follow us on Twitter at Springfield LCP. You can also find many resources and information on our website, and that is springfieldcityhall.com. But most importantly, you may reach us at 787-6437 if you wish to ask a question or speak to a mediator. Thank you so much for watching the Consumer Toolbox, and I'll see you again next month. The Massachusetts Attorney General's Office, Western Mass Division, will be hosting a consumer conference on Tuesday, October 20th. Registration will begin at 12:30 in the afternoon, and the event will take place at Holyoke Community College campus. The keynote speaker will be Attorney General Maura Healey. Registration is required. Please visit the Massachusetts Attorney General's website for more information, and that information for the website should be on the screen. Thank you.